Do you think it is unsustainable for marketers, especially at the leadership level? Because entry level can still switch jobs quickly, but somebody who is at the senior position paid well, it's not easy to just switch in seconds, right?
If your goal is like, I just want to make, $1 million a year, well, you can probably work 24 hours a day and get to that point.
You already have the tools at your disposal. You have scripts, you have rules inside of Google Ads, you have all these things. You don't need AI.
But to come in and be able to just say, okay, I have a new client, I'll add the client information, and then I'm going to push a button and have my onboarding task list with the due dates.
If you have to go back, let's say 10 years younger, what would be the one advice you want to give to your younger self so that you can avoid the burnout trap?
Asking me about, hey, should I do the freelance thing? Yes. If you're asking yourself, do it, at least on the side. You should absolutely do it.
Hi, gentlemen. Welcome, both of you. And I'm really glad to have you both again on the 10x Marketer podcast. Let's talk about one interesting topic that marketers are often encountered with, that is the burnout. So let's start with a personal experience or story. Have either of you personally experienced or hit a wall with burnout? How did it look like, and how do you actually recognize it and overcome it? Perhaps there is a story to start with. Boris, you want to start with this?
Oh yeah, I can start. First of all, thanks for having me again. Like I have so much fun talking to you guys each time we do this. So yeah, burnout. I gotta say I've hit a wall with burnout personally a couple of times already in my career. Um, First when I was working for an agency and I just was overloaded with work and I
Mm-hmm.
felt like I couldn't cope anymore. And also I think I'm experiencing or I have experienced burnout like syndromes ever since I went freelance as a consultant. Um, and truth be told, it's always kind of hard to recognize for me because it looks different each time. So it might be depression like syndromes, it might be like my body aches, it might be restlessness, it might be a lack of an ability to concentrate or carry out tasks in an orderly manner. So it's always a different thing when it hits me. So that's what also makes it sort of a bit harder to recognize. But yeah, certainly I've had burnout before, a couple of times already for sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Also, thank you. I also was thrilled for the opportunity to talk to you guys again. Always a blast. I think so. I also, this is something I struggled with on repeat for years and years and years, and I was always confused um, because I would just pump myself up with all these motivational videos and podcasts and just pour all of this learning and studying into me and so all these good inputs, right? But I was still overwhelmed. I was still exhausted. I was still feeling hopeless, more or less, and just like stuck. So for me, those kind of are synonymous with burnout. I had no desire to continue doing what I was doing because I think anytime I've experienced burnout, and you can look back at my LinkedIn and see the posts, and you'll see like a good long stretch, and then nothing for like 3 months or 6 months, and um, sometimes you just need to step away and have some time for yourself, some introspection to understand what it is that's going on.
Yeah.
And I found for myself, I recognize that I'm in burnout when I don't. This actually took me, I mean, like decades of burning out over and over again in different fields to recognize that this comes up when I don't have like a clear goal and I'm not making progress toward that goal. So you mentioned working in an agency and just being overloaded with work. So often I think we associate burnout with too much work, and I think that for me the association there is I have too much work and there's no way that I can possibly get out of this situation. I can't share the work with someone else. I can't hire someone to bring on some of this extra work. And I've put myself in situations as a solopreneur where I had the ability to hire people, but I didn't charge enough to be able to have that margin. And so I felt that same level of overwhelm and burnout because I was growing and it was great. But every time I took on new clients, it was like my level of quality started dipping, and I was viewing myself as a failure for not being able to do the level of work that I try to hold myself to for all of these different clients. And so there were a lot of reasons that came on, but I just try to recognize all of the different things that have led to it over the years, and try to structure things in a way that doesn't happen anymore. So maybe raising prices or finding ways to improve efficiency, which has become easier lately. So
Understood. So I think talk to any marketers or people who are working in marketing agency, they will have a similar view on this topic. Is it that the agency life or the hustle culture is glamorized too much? That is one reason contributing to burnouts often, or is it the resource crunch, as you all rightly said, that the prices are so competitive that you can't hire multiple people, and it becomes like there are no margins if you hire more people. That could be one reason. So there are people who are handling 40, 50 accounts in terms of Google ads, and still we are expecting result for almost everyone in that 50 accounts. So that definitely contributes to the burnout overall, right?
For sure, workload is a big one. Uh, I guess it could be different from person to person. So what personally what sends me most of the time is this feeling that I'm actually working and working and working, and I don't have a way for my brain to switch off of the work and stimulate it like with something different. Um, so you get up, you get your coffee, you sit in front of the computer for 8, 10, however many hours, and you do the work, and you switch the computer off, and then you eat something, then you go to bed. Repeat cycle over and over again. Um, so I think what I learned was to take those little breaks in between, do something, go for a walk, read something, read a book, play the guitar, like talk to someone else, like an actual human, not just stare into the screen. Um, so just to get the mind off of the, like, that one work track that you're usually on. Um, yeah, and you mentioned social media and hustle culture. I think that actually plays a super big part in people potentially feeling worthless. Because apparently everyone is just killing it in their business. Everyone's raking in 7 figures.
Yeah, at
Everyone
least on LinkedIn.
everyone's working with
I'm
the
at
big.
12 now, actually. So
Exactly. Yeah, like you said. So I got some catching up to do, right?
yeah, you'll get there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just work 26 hours a day. I can once make a great living as well. Um, so yeah, like those comparisons to everyone else, I think are big in that sense. And I've talked to a lot of marketers I'm friendly with, and they're all saying the same thing. It's like not everyone, despite having a big name, potentially is making a great living or is drowning in clients. Like the work is sometimes drying up because there's economic factors, maybe, that are contributing to that sort of situation, right?
Yes. So
Yeah.
this question specifically, the follow-up one is to Ryan. You're talking to so many agency owners and helping them scale. Are there any specific signs that you see within teams that you're working with, that there are certain signs of stress or depression that is leading to burnout? Are there any work conditions or cultures that contribute more to this rather than just it's a general scenario?
Yeah, yeah, actually. So similar to what Boris was saying, anytime there's a culture of hustle over everything, of productivity first, it tends to be less of a safe place, and there tends to be that propensity to just push yourself until you are just broken and burnt out and wrung dry. So I don't see that much when the agencies that I work with, actually. So most of what I see, I work with phenomenal agencies, and it's more subtle in agencies where they're trying, they care about their employees or their contractors, and so I tend to see more when there's Boris mentioned going and talking to an actual person and struggling more with burnout since becoming a freelancer. So anytime you're remote and you don't have that person to person interaction, there's actually neurochemical deficiencies from being isolated. So you when you're with other people, you have the opportunity to release oxytocin and feel connected to people, which helps you feel loved. And so if you don't have that in a remote environment, you have to do other things to make up for that. And so having consistent conversations, like video calls like this, can make a really big difference, even if you're just chatting for like 10 to 15 minutes, and then maybe you have a little bit of time to talk business or whatever, and troubleshoot an account or something. But just some of this like relationship focused chatter is so healthy. The whole water cooler talk, it's when not negatively associated with gossiping about your boss or whatever, like it's actually really healthy to be able to just be people together, having a conversation. I find that tends to help. I see more leadership actually struggling with overwhelm, with burnout, than junior or entry level positions. So often the standards we place on leadership are increasing ever more. So a leader in an agency needs to be an expert in their field, but they also need to be an expert strategist, and they need to be an expert at communication, and they need to be an expert at conversion tracking and at analytics and at pulling reports and at creating presentations. And there's so many things stacked on top of each other that and a lot of times they're being paid really well. When they're not being paid well and they have those expectations, it gets worse. But when they're paid well and they have those expectations, they really really try hard, even if they're not paid well. A lot of times they're trying really hard to meet those expectations, and a lot of times those expectations aren't communicated super clearly. So there's more frustration, there's more burnout on their part because they're trying to meet this ever moving target, and they're reaching for it. They're grasping for something they can never quite get their hands on, and it's exhausting. And they're always, a lot of times, if the ability for a leader to praise their employees and to thank them and show their appreciation for what's being done is very important, and often um, underdeveloped. And that can be a huge help in just giving them some sense of I'm doing what I need to do. Like there is a level where I can turn it off at the end of the day and know I've done what I need to do. I don't need to work 12 hours today. I can work 9 to 5 or whatever my hours are. I can work a couple hours here, a couple hours there, and then space it out throughout the day, whatever. But knowing that you've done what you're supposed to do and you're doing it well can be a huge factor in preventing burnout from overwhelm and an ever increasing workload and moving target.
Yeah.
So, I have one question that is slightly related to what you discussed. So, there is a constant pressure of delivering better results, maybe improving or optimizing the campaign beyond limit. So, there is no upper limit to anything. There is no benchmark, at least when it comes to ads. Like, if this is the best performance you can achieve, so whatever you achieved is the baseline. Do you think it is unsustainable for marketers, especially at the leadership level? Because entry level can still switch jobs quickly, but somebody who is at the senior position paid well, it's not easy to just switch in seconds, right?
Well, I think that's sort of leading us towards a different conversation, and that's the whole economy of scale, how much is enough, is our current economic system, is capitalism and growth, always need to show growth quarter over quarter or year over year, especially if you're a publicly listed company. And I don't think it's a stretch to say that that's probably a bit unsustainable for everyone, um, also for the environment. Um, and there seems to have been a point at which it wasn't just sufficient to have a great product and do really well as a company and provide stable jobs for your hundreds of employees and their families. No, you need to always beat Wall Street or the forecasts. Otherwise, you're just an utter complete failure. And then, of course, as a CEO of a publicly listed company, you probably have the golden parachute, so you can whenever stuff goes south, you can just take the golden handshake, leave, and then just 2 years later resurface somewhere else. It's not such a biggie, right? But as someone who's in that hamster wheel, I believe that to be very, very, I mean, that's a high pressure environment, and
Yep.
some people fare well with that, others don't. That's as much as I'm going to say about maybe my economic political affiliation on this whole topic. It's become pretty apparent.
Yeah, I'm hearing Muse songs from the Second Law in my head right now. So, um, yeah, I think Simon Sinek has a book called The Infinite Game, and it I love Simon Sinek because he brings humanity back into business, which I think is just one of the greatest causes you can have. And the difference it makes in a business's workforce and in their productivity and their bottom line, even to have humans that are happy to be doing work or working together toward a goal or whatever. It's shocking the difference that can make, because you're not constantly burning out your human resources and leaving them to dry in your wake. But I think, sorry, go ahead, Boris.
Just, I don't want to hijack this thing, but whenever someone says a human resource, that's sort of the red flag for me. I know you didn't mean it that way, but it's not a human. It's like at the end of the day, we're dealing with humans or with workers or employees or whatever. I think
Oh yeah.
that coining that term human resource is just very, very, it's not
Oh, that's exactly why I said it.
almost derogatory, right?
Yeah, that's it, because that's the way that they're viewed in companies, where they're just they're used as resources to then dispose of. But that's not what they are. And so in this book, The Infinite Game, he talks about how business is not a start to finish endeavor. It's not a journey with a set destination. It's an infinite game, and so you are always moving the target down the line, and the goal for any business should be more or less perpetuity. Mm-hmm. But you can't have endless growth in perpetuity. And so, as Boris mentioned, publicly traded companies, especially, the frequent moving of those goalposts to always hit the quarterly numbers for your shareholders, that lands you in a position like Google with their antitrust hearings. Not that the 500-pound gorilla is going to be taken down by this or anything, but you have people like abandoning their morals and their ethics that they started with, the do no evil, is just gone in favor of let's burn out all of our people to make an extra buck, and then let's start hurting our advertisers. Let's start hurting the people that are making us wealthy, which is very unsustainable. If you burn down an entire forest, then yeah, you'll have a lot of wood ashes, but once those wood ashes are gone, you don't have anything else to use.
True. So I think this fundamentally changes the discussion to a different direction, and we don't want to go there. We just want to bring you back, and let's talk about a topic that we started with. So let's see, what are the first few signs that you usually see in people or in yourself that yes, now starting to hit me where it shouldn't?
Maybe to preface this answer by saying, I think I always did best in companies where I felt seen and valued, not only as a contributor, but also as the human that I am. So with all my quirks and traits and negative qualities as well. Like we're not gonna lie, like I'm not always super easy to get along with. Um, but still, I think that's when I personally do the best, when I feel accepted. Now, usually what happens for me is, the first thing that I start to see is that I have trouble sleeping. I think that's a big one. Waking up frequently at night, waking up early in the morning. Usually when I'm good, I have rock solid sleep. So I go to bed at 10 and I wake up at 6, like clockwork. I don't even need an alarm. But once that starts to slip, that's like the first sign. Mind you, you just sort of push it off and it's like it's no big deal. Like that's not gonna, right. It's gonna be fine. Um, but then like probably not eating so good, not working out anymore. So all the things that I know benefit me in the long run, usually are the first to go as well because they're hard to sustain. So that's when I start to realize that I'm probably on the wrong path. And then when it gets really serious, you know, highly irritable, being snappy with the family, stuff like that. So yeah, but by that point, usually I'll have my wife tell me, Boris, there's probably something going on with you, and you should have yourself checked out, please.
It is nice to have that support,
Yep.
even if it's not always nice to hear that you're being a pain to live with. Hypothetically, of course. Um, yeah, I think for me it's similar. So irritability is a big factor for me. I'm sure you know most people struggle with this, but I tend to struggle with associating my work with my value as a human.
Mhm.
And if I'm not doing well or keeping up with my to-do list, if I'm not staying on top of things, or if I feel like I'm not progressing in the way that I'd like, then I start to spiral down. um, I think also I find if I'm playing a lot of video games, or like pulling up a mobile game on my phone or something at the beginning of the day, that tends to be both a sign that I'm not being motivated by the work that I'm doing, and I'm starting to kind of seek an escape or external stimulation.
Mhm.
But that also drains my dopamine reservoir at the beginning of the day because I'm getting all of that out, and then I sit down and I'm like, well, I don't want to do anything. I just want to play games. So I find that if there are some things that if I don't do, tend to lead to this kind of repeating pattern of lack of motivation, which perpetuates the burnout cycle. I think because it is cyclical, and I think it's at the end of the day probably most related to lack of a clear goal or progress toward that goal. And so for me, um, which I think overwhelm plays a part in, because if you're overwhelmed and you're overloaded, you aren't necessarily making progress toward your desired goal. And maybe you need to reposition that goal. So, if your goal is like, I just want to make, $1 million a year, well, you can probably work 24 hours a day and get to that point, like Alex Hormozy would tell you, just do more. But I think Alex Hormozy, like as a person, would also recognize, like, well, I mean, you should sleep too. And you should probably like exercise, take care of your health. And maybe if you're doing the wrong things, then working 24 hours a day isn't going to make you $1 million. So I think just recognizing what it is that helps bring you back. Um, so Boris mentioned like going for a walk, talking to people, playing guitar. I find if I don't listen to music for a couple of days, I am on the fast track to burning out or just complete lack of motivation.
We would love to add your playlist in the description of this podcast. Now, let's say you're working with a lot of agency owners, and if you want to use this forum that we have right now to give a message to them that this is the way to build healthier teams without sacrificing on the performance, would you be able to describe it, put it as a checklist or something?
Oh man, a checklist is, I mean, it's
No, I'm not
doable
putting
probably.
you under pressure.
It
Just
all so easy.
just have easy, and whatever best advice you can give with a free mind, just do that.
Yeah, just have very clear communication about the expectations you have for your team, and try to recognize their limits. Try to create a an environment, a culture, which sometimes is as easy as saying, very clearly what is okay and what's not okay. Um, try and have this culture and this environment of free, open, transparent communication. So with my clients, I have very frank discussions, sometimes about things that I think they need to improve, or sometimes about my weaknesses, which as a consultant, as someone with violent imposter syndrome, I is really hard for me, because yes, I've provided loads of value to this client already. We've been working together for a long time. I have these conversations, and I'm still afraid to say things like, oh, sometimes I drop the ball. Oh man, I forgot to check this campaign after switching the bidding strategy, and it didn't serve impressions for a week. Like, that's a big mistake for somebody in my position to make. But if I can just be a real human being and own that, then that's a huge relief for me, and it motivates me to continue doing well and doing better, rather than feeling beaten down and overwhelmed. So employees are even more so, because their entire income relies on this team. So having an environment where you can open up about your weaknesses or about mistakes that are made, don't let them just get away with it. Like this client, when I said that, they're like, cool, how can we prevent that in the future? Like, so I told them because I know. But if they were to be like, well, this is unacceptable, and I don't want to work with you anymore, like, okay, I get that. But that seems unreasonable to me over like a mistake or even a few mistakes, because I it's not the first or only mistake I've made. But having this not seeking perfection, having clear communication about goals and expectations, about a role. A lot of times there are blurred lines between roles, and if you aren't saying who owns what tasks, I have a friend that works for a company. I won't give too many details, but his boss is not particularly understanding, and is constantly berating him for not finishing work that he didn't tell him to do, or doing. He'll tell him to do it one way, and then get on to him for doing it that way, and be like, why'd you do it this way? You told me to do it that way. Well, you should have known to not, or whatever. So I mean, my friend is very burnt out, because he doesn't have a clear goal. He's not making progress toward that goal, and he doesn't feel like he's doing a good job. He doesn't feel valued. So to Boris's point, like, help them feel valued, seen, heard, both as an employee doing productive work and moving the company forward, but also as a human being. Hey, Ryan's friend, how are you doing today? What's going on in your life? What's exciting you outside of work? So, I mean, just be a real human being. Like, how would you treat your friends if your friends were helping you on a project, in your yard or something?
So the next question is to both of you, but I would like to start the answer with Boris. Uh, you started as an employee, now you're a full-time freelancer. So let's talk about setting boundaries Is it easy to set boundaries as an employee, or is it easy as a freelancer, or it's not possible at all?
Should be easy in both scenarios. If we're being completely honest with each other. As an employee, you are contractually obliged to work a certain number of hours, or you're obliged to deliver certain result, right? So in an ideal world, as an employer, I wouldn't really mind how you deliver said results and how long it takes you to deliver said results. Also wouldn't mind when you're at your desk or when do you reply to emails if it's not urgent. um, but in an agency environment, like personally to me, it was always a bit harder to set boundaries. I have to say. Now, being my own boss, of course, that has to be a learning curve as well, because when you set out, then you're happy for each client that you can get on board, regardless of if they mesh with your style of work or not. Um, and then, of course, I ran into situations where boundaries weren't respected, or people were blowing up my phone, or they were writing emails in the middle of the night, um, berating me when I did reply straight away, even though they knew I'm in Germany and it's like a 9 hour time difference. Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, get up each hour and check my email? That's not going to work. Um, but I've for the most part, I've been able to mitigate that, simply just by being picky, about which clients I take on and which ones I pass on. That's something I've had to learn. Something I've struggled with lately is that I have clients all over the world. I have clients in Europe. I have clients in the US. I have clients on the East Coast. I have clients in California. I have clients in Australia. So that's sometimes it blurs the line exactly. So the continent that I'm missing right now is Asia, I want to say, but we don't want to go there. Um, and yeah, so I've had to take calls at 10 p.m. my time just because of time constraints. That can mess with my sort of circadian rhythm, with my biology, for sure, for sure.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I think for me, it's probably easier, or it was easier, to as an employee to set boundaries because there were more defined expectations. This was, of course, 10 plus years ago now, but I mean, I've been an employee several times since then. In positions of leadership, it's a lot harder. So I was a VP of strategy for one agency. I was a director of client services for another agency, and there were very clear expectations about the amount of work needed, or the amount of hours to put in. Even in one case. So having those expectations clearly communicated did help with setting boundaries, but there was also that kind of expectation that, hey, if you get that email at 7 o'clock, you better deal with it. 7 in the evening. Hey, if I email you in the morning or text you or call you, you better address it. And I think it's healthy to have expectations of 24-hour response time, especially in this. Boris mentioned worldwide client base. It's very unrealistic to expect an immediate response for someone 9 hours away. Nine, and I also have several clients in Australia, and I will on occasion set later calls, but uh, I think that I'm learning to set better boundaries more and more every year, and my amazing and supportive wife is helping me with this, as I've been just struggling with codependence, and I've had several narcissistic clients who just prey on that, and so I've learned a lot of really bad habits of, like, hey, I get a call at 8 o'clock at night. Well, this has got to be important. And if I don't talk to this person, I'll probably lose the client. And if I lose the client, then I'll have to replace another $6,000 a month or whatever. And like, that's I can't deal with that. But if I start having these, like most of my clients, if I just ignore the call or let it go to voicemail, if I wait until the next day to respond to the email, like they never expected me to just be there and when they tell me to jump, ask how high, like they just had something they wanted to communicate with me. And understanding that, like, yes, you're a person and you have needs and you have value, and that they also are a person and that they can understand and they can get over it. Like if it's an emergency, they can leave a message. It doesn't always hurt to check what they're saying and see if it's an emergency, but to the need to respond immediately, that's when you start to get into that unhealthy level of, oh, I have to do this and I have to do this, and you never get that time to rest. So I would be with my family and I would get an email or a text or something, and it would be like, oh, hey, I know we're about to walk into the grocery store, but I've got to respond to this like right now, and I don't. And um higher prices, so to Boris's point of being picky, higher prices, nothing like exorbitant, um don't overcharge, but charging enough that you're able to be picky, that like maybe instead of having to have 3 clients, you can have one, and build in a little extra margin, allows you to be picky so that you can say no to a client. Because one of the big problems, in addition to codependence, um, is that feeling like you need to close the deal no matter what. And so you're willing to take less money because it feels like that will make it easier to close the deal. When in reality, you could have charged twice, 3 times, 4 times as much money, depending on what you're charging now. And they'd be happy to pay it because it's worth it and that's a competitive rate. So yeah, I think one of the biggest factors in setting boundaries for me was increasing my rates and understanding that people are often willing to wait. I don't have to respond right away.
Understood. So let's talk about everyone's favorite topic now, which is AI and automation. Is it contributing to burnout? Is it making people work better and maybe get some time to relax or me time? Or is it simply disguising the burnout?
Yes.
Which one?
uh, I'm gonna jump in real quick, and then I'll let Boris tackle it. So I think all of the above, actually. So I think that it's a huge help in, when I feel overwhelmed by the thought of doing a task. Um, just I have so much going on, and then like this thing was dumped on my plate, and I'm like, oh, and I've got to put all this thought into structuring this out, and like, oh, I've got to write all these ads. Well, AI can be, if you've already put in the work to build the right prompts or to structure the right custom GPT or whatever, maybe you have a solid agent. Um, it can be a huge help in taking that overwhelm off your plate and getting you to a point where you can just edit and tweak. So decision fatigue is a really big deal, and Chris Voss talks about this, the author who never split the difference, about how if someone approaches you with a yes or no question toward the end of the day, um, like if or with a question, then you may be overwhelmed and you may not feel like you have the energy to respond. But if they ask you a yes or no question, especially if the answer is no, it's easier to say that and then give feedback, because it like primes the brain to deliver that response. um, and so um, if you have AI giving you this head start of like, hey, provide me something, and I can say no, and then give you the feedback, or whatever, even if it's like, oh, that's good, accept, change this, that can help prevent that overwhelm and move you across the finish line with things if you have like a heavy deadline or something like that. But I think that it can also train us to be overwhelmed at the thought of doing work. So we end up with this big list of tasks to do, and we're like, oh, okay, let me fire up ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, and let me start, having it do all the work for me. And so we take away the quality and the value that we can deliver by just having AI crank out whatever we can because we feel burnt out or because we feel overwhelmed. So you've got to have your processes, really, or you've got to have your criteria for when AI should be used and when it's okay to just sit down and do the work yourself. So I spent the last couple of days doing an audit of an account that I could have had AI bust out probably similar information. I've trained some GPTs with like all of my content, and I've been impressed by some of the stuff it spit out. It's smarter than me, but it is. I find that if I'm going in and putting in the work, that I'm able to grow at the same time that I'm adding all of the value from my years of experience. And it's different when you do the work, when you say it in your words, when you are looking at it. So you can use it as a head start. I think that's usually one of the better use cases,
Yeah.
but don't use it as the finished product.
I fully agree. But to just rephrase what you said, I think it's important for people to get their reps in. Um, I think the expectations, regarding AI have just been so sky high lately from the industry, from clients. I get questions all the time. How can we use AI to do this or that? And to which, most of the time I reply, you don't need AI to do this. You already have the tools at your disposal. You have scripts, you have rules inside of Google Ads, you have all these things. You don't need AI, especially not to do the fundamentals. We all know that Google Ad success usually is doing the fundamentals really, really well over and over again. Um, Everything else, ideation, generation, even analysis, reporting, yeah, of course, can be automated. Um, but if you get the reps in, that they say 10,000 hours of focused work or exercise usually do the trick, and you need that as a foundation, because only then you'll actually be able to decide if what the AI gives you is solid, or if it's just something that's regurgitated, sorry, or even factually wrong. So I think proceed with caution, but also I'm still sort of optimistic about AI. So in my case, as a solo guy, if I could do the same amount of work in half the time or even like a quarter of the time, I'd be happy. I wouldn't take on more work. I'd much rather use it to have more free time with my family. So that's my whole angle on the AI discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Understood. But I think another aspect that is slightly overlooked in both the answers is that AI is contributing a lot to layoffs, people losing their jobs, and that also contributing significantly to the burnout, stress, how to manage the family income and everything else. So I think that is one aspect which is also have to be looked up critically.
Absolutely
Yeah,
agree. I think we're in a sort of privileged situation, in the sense that we're probably having to deal with that pressure of, is AI going to come for my job? I think in the long run, AI is going to come for pretty much all of our jobs. Um, but yeah, hopefully that horizon is still 10, 20 years in the future. So I'm being hopeful.
That's the
yeah.
working life. We'll retire by then.
Mhm.
I think that an important factor now is for people to kind of spend some time, especially those concerned about AI taking their job, spend some time reflecting on your skills, your talents, your abilities, what you want to do for work. And there are so many ways to make money now. Like look at YouTube and look at all of the influencers spending time, and you don't have to even, like, there are faceless channels, like you don't have to film yourself doing things. um I mean, like I look, my kids watch the Outdoor Boys channel, and there's there's this guy and his family, and he used to be a lawyer, and now he just goes out camping and fishing and hunting with his kids, and dude makes a good living. He's got millions of subscribers. Um, there are people making money, you know, like Drumeo, the channel Drumeo. I'm a drummer. It's awesome. Yeah. And he just goes and he like introduces drummers to new bands and has them like play the drums to that song, without having heard the drums, and all sorts of things. And I mean, he's also got like he has drummers teaching lessons and things like that, and it's really cool. But like, you can get really creative in ways to make money. So if you're concerned about AI taking your job, take stock of what you enjoy, what it is that you have that you can provide value to others with, and and like how you could potentially start that. And a lot of times it's just building an audience or getting in front of enough people, with that value that you have to offer. And I mean, start doing that now. If you have this fear of AI taking your job, start doing something you really enjoy that others view as valuable, and share that value with them. And maybe think about, how can I put together a product or a service around this? And you'd be surprised at how you can make a living.
Yeah,
All
so
right.
I think what are you guys up to then? Is there anything new cooking up because of AI or automation or something?
You take the wheel, Ryan.
Maybe. So I've been playing around with AI software development actually, and I've been thoroughly impressed and also very frustrated. But it's I've actually just published the beta version of a project management software for Google Ads freelancers. I'm very excited about. So there's a lot of project management softwares out there, a lot that you can use for free, but none of them have pre-built task lists for Google Ads freelancers like mine does. Um, Most of them you have to jump in and you build your own task lists, and if you don't have the task lists to build, and you don't have the if you have lots of clients, then you suddenly are paying out the nose for all of these different projects you need. But to come in and be able to just say, okay, I have a new client, I'll add the client information, and then I'm going to push a button and have my onboarding task list with the due dates. I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yep.
So I'm excited about this. I'm going to run it to some beta testers before I push it out live to everyone. But that's what I've been working on.
Awesome. How about you, Boris?
First of all, Ryan, I'm super intrigued about the software that you're working on, and
Yeah, I'll share it with you.
I by applying to be one of your beta testers.
Yeah, we would love to be the guinea pigs.
So,
You guys got it.
just one thing, Ryan, because you've quoted all these authors and books and stuff, and I'm gonna quote Frederick Valet, of Optimizer, who
Mm.
said, AI is probably not going to take your job, but a person using AI is. So that's maybe a good quote to cap off this discussion. Now, personally, I've been working on writing some music with a friend, which is going to be like in the pop punk hardcore sort of genre. I'm sure you know the drummer from I Prevail. He's got his
Mm.
own little channel. I love it. Love it as well. And professionally, I've set up and launched my own little community, which is called Google Ads with Boris. Um, you could find all my SOPs in there. It's sort of a little close-knit group of like-minded people who need a safe space to discuss all their burning questions, without running the risk of clients potentially reading their questions on LinkedIn, being like, "Oh, that sounds a lot like my problem. Why doesn't he how to solve it? Why does he need to go to others on LinkedIn of all places?" So that's what I've been up to, basically.
Nice.
Awesome. So I think that is kind of not contributing to but the burnouts of both of you. Now let's conclude because I think we have been in the discussion for almost an hour and there's no burnout sign so far. Now, I will conclude by asking this simple question. If you have to go back, let's say 10 years younger, what would be the one advice you want to give to your younger self so that you can avoid the burnout trap?
I think it'd be to be a lot clearer about my personal goals. Because back when I was working at the agencies, I always thought I had to work really hard and show the fruits of my labor. Of course, you have to do that. But if I thought if I only worked enough, then I could climb the ladder and be rewarded in some fashion. Turns out, if you really deliver all the time, you're being rewarded. It's just not in the way you think, but it's just with more work. Because if you're being the workhorse, then you're always going to be the workhorse. Um, so maybe the one biggest piece of advice I'd give my younger self is to be more courageous and branch out on my own a lot sooner than I actually did, because I've had that nagging thought in the back of my head that, hey, I can do this for myself and I could actually make a much better living if I, it doesn't take a lot. It just takes, if we're being honest, 3 to 4 clients that pay really well for you to make a really good living. So that's something I would tell myself. And that's actually advice I've given to others asking me about, hey, should I do the freelance thing? Yes. If you're asking yourself, do it, at least on the side. You should absolutely do it because it's super rewarding.
Oh yeah, agreed. I actually have I've been in this position where I had to tell someone who was just kind of starting out on their freelance journey what I would suggest, and I think my biggest lessons are kind of in one is similar to yours is that I need to recognize that I have value, that I can contribute, that I am able to do this, and I don't need to. I can bet on myself instead of having to take a job with a client because I don't feel like I can handle it. Another is make sure you charge enough to hire. So factor in into your pricing that you may need to hire, even if it's contract or part-time or for a couple hours, like you may need to hire someone to help you. So if you want to grow this thing, factor that into your rates so that you can grow it instead of getting overwhelmed and burning out. And that was a big lesson that I've learned. And I think that um, setting clear goals and like being picky in the problems that you solve and how you talk about that, not necessarily the type of clients that you help. You should be picky about them, but especially when you're starting out, you can't necessarily afford to be picky as much. If it's like, hey, I have 30 days